Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk About House. I'm Todd.
I'm Juana.
Okay, we are going to do a great video today about rent versus buy, but this is not going to be the traditional thing you've heard on all the other videos. We're going to look at this from a completely different perspective. So we're not going to talk about all the benefits of buying.
No.
None of the benefits. All we're going to talk about is the one thing that's got people stuck, which is the difference in the payment between buying a house and renting a house. Okay. Before we get started, because we've got a lot of great data, and then toward the end of the video, we're going to flip it and show you the historical numbers on how this actually looks. And hopefully this sheds some light on why homeowners have 40 times the net worth. And it's not necessarily just because equity in the house, right? Okay. All right. So this is what we're going to do. First thing, we're going to put up, this is the rent versus buy. Now, this is your monthly housing payment for housing. Doesn't matter whether you rent versus buy. Now, these numbers are generic, and they're basically made up. And I'll tell you the theory behind them, because I basically went back historically and did a similar thing to see if this matches, and it does match. Okay, so we're going to start with year one, and we're going to assume your rent is $200, but if you bought it $300,000 starter house, it's $2,600. Now, the numbers are not really relevant, because you could say, hey, I'm in the Bay Area or in New York City, and these numbers don't make sense. Stick with the video, because we're just trying to point out a principle. Okay. These numbers are pretty close to median new mortgage payments on a $300,000 house, and also national rents. Okay. Now, if you look at this, it says minus $600. So buying a house gives you $600 a month less than renting, right? So one of the conventional wisdom that people are saying is, but you don't see, you're better off financially to rent, because you take that $600 and invest it in the stock market. Okay, Wanda, let's talk about that first one. How many renters do you know that are taking the difference between what they would have purchased a home and they're putting it in the stock market?
Zero.
Oh, why is this? You deal with a lot of renters because you manage a whole bunch of properties and you talk to these people all the time.
Right. So zero for a lot of reasons. First of all, tenants tend to not have a whole lot of savings. Tenants tend to not be particularly financially literate.
Okay.
So they don't necessarily think about it that way. And even if they would like to put it in the stock market, like, again, financial literacy, they don't know what to invest in the stock market, and they'll probably put it in some fund or some meme currency or something like that. That isn't going to go anywhere.
Okay. All right.
What is it? There was one, was it called Pepe?
Pepe, that was the hot one.
Yes.
It was hot for like a day and then it went to zero. Okay.
Right.
All right. So now what we're going to look at is, let's look at this over the lifetime of two different people, one who rents a house and one who buys a house. Now, let's say the person buys the $300 house, for the sake of this argument, stays in the house for 30 years plus. They never refi. So even when interest rates go down, they don't refi. They just pay the $2,600, right? So this way you can make the assumption interest rates can go up or whatever, and anything can happen to inflation. We don't really care about the home price in the future, because we're just looking at the payment. Now, in 5 years, so we're talking a 5% rent appreciation per year. It meets the CPI rent number. It's actually lower than the last 4 years. Rents have been well over 5% the last 4 years. We're going very conservatively. After 5 years, the renter now is paying $2,500 a month. Remember, the homeowner who bought is still paying $2,600 because their payment hasn't changed, fixed rate mortgage. Now they're only $50 in the savings. Now remember, it took 5 years for that to happen. So every year they were chipping away at that $6. Do you think they're putting that extra $50 a month that they're saving because they didn't buy in the stock market?
Well, no, I don't think so, for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is because other costs of living have also increased, so that has eaten up whatever savings that they would have had. Okay.
After 10 years, now I'll give you an example. You'll say, Todd, these numbers, they're not right. Yeah, they are. We have rentals that we get $2,200 a month for right now that 7 years ago we got $1,600 for. And 5 years before that, we're getting $1,100 a month for.
Right.
Everything is more. And when these things were renting for $1,100-$1,200 a month, that was the going rent. And here we are, maybe 12 years later, getting $1,000 more a month. So it's not unreasonable 10 years from now. That house that you renting for $2,000 is $3,200. Because remember, your wages have gone up over 10 years too. So you're probably like, hey, this is not a big deal. My wages are more. I make more money. I can afford the rent. Well, guess what? That person who bought a house is still only paying $2,600. They have a $650 a month advantage financially. After 15 years, 5 more years later, Juana, they're now paying $4,100 a month. Now remember, they could have locked in a $2,600 a month payment for 30 years, but they didn't because of the upfront $600 that they didn't want to lose that. And now they're going to pay for it forever. Before I go through the rest of the numbers to talk about some other stuff, what do you think is, let's say that you actually have a qualified person who could go buy the $300,000 starter house. It would be tight, maybe, right?
Sure.
What is stopping them from doing this? Is it they just don't see the value? Is it that they haven't figured out that if I look far enough in the future, this is going to be a problem? What is going on?
Well, so, there are lots of reasons why people don't buy, right? So maybe they don't have the down payment. Maybe they don't know that they want to stay in the area. Maybe they are not of a culture that are accustomed to being homeowners. Lots of different reasons why people wouldn't buy.
Okay. After 20 years, their rent is now $5,000. This is 20 years from now. I would not be shocked 20 years from now if median rents are $5,000. But guess what? That person who bought the house is still only paying $2,600 a month. They have a $2,700 a month advantage. That's $2,700 a month to put their kids into a private school or, piano lessons, buy a new car, or put it in the stock market. Okay, ready for this? After 30 years, they have $0 payment for the mortgage. Yes, they'll have some minor monthly payments for taxes and stuff. But you're paying $6,700 a month rent in 30 years, and they're paying zero. They have a $6,700 a month. So imagine you're in your mid-20s, and it's you and your sibling maybe, and now you're in your mid-50s, and they're like, oh, my house is paid off. And they're like, I pay $6,700 a month rent. They're like, well, I don't pay anything because my house is paid off. And it's worth $1.3 million because in 30 years, a $300,000 house can be worth $1.3 million. Now, I actually went back and did some research because people are going to say, but Todd, you made these numbers up. This isn't real. This is just fantasy. I'm going to ask you to guess something, Juana. What do you think? Let's go back in 30 years in time, 1994. What do you think a median rental was in 1994? 30 years ago. Knowing today it's $2,000.
Okay, so let's say it was $500 a month.
A median rental in the United States in 1994, $395 a month. Now, this is not for houses. This did include apartments. It was for all properties. Okay, probably it was close to $500 a month. A median home in 1994, $119,000. Now, think about this. You go to somebody today and say, oh, well, we own our house and we don't have a mortgage payment. And this is what they say to you. Oh, yeah, but back then, houses were only $120,000 and they were super cheap. You just got lucky because you were at an age to buy a house when they were super cheap. Now, remember that conversation. Flash forward 30 years from now, and somebody's saying, I can't buy a house, they're $1.3 million. And you go, well, I bought a house 30 years ago. And they go, yeah, but back then you could buy a starter home for only $300,000. That was nothing. Remember, they're here today saying they don't want to buy the $300,000 starter home because I'll wait for prices to crash or who knows what the deal is, right? If you look back at the number from 30 years ago, you look at today's numbers, when you look at the numbers on this chart, it is pretty self-explanatory what is happening. And I believe, yes, people benefit from the mortgage tax credit.
Sure.
They benefit from appreciation. But I think more than anything, wealth is built. because people have locked in a housing cost forever. And in a lot of cases, remember, these people refi, and maybe, okay, so today, median rent in the U.S. is about $2,200. The median mortgage payment for all borrowers, including all other housing costs, full in shelter, $1,700. So if you own a house, chances are you pay less than rent. Now, yes, not if you're originating that house today, because of the anomaly of home prices have just gone up and interest rates are pretty high. But for people that bought in the past, people today are saying, well, you're lucky. But then 30 years from now, people are going to say that people bought today, well, you were lucky. Because 30 years ago, houses were only $300,000-$400,000. Today, they're $1.3 million.
So some of it is luck and some of it is just hard work. It's delayed gratification, it's sacrifice, it's discipline, it's all those things, because that's what it takes to be a homeowner. It takes all those things. To your point, I was one of those people that bought a house for $120,000. My interest rate was obscene. It was double digit.
It's like 13%, wasn't it?
Yeah. My mortgage payment was about $1,300. It was crazy.
Okay, let's talk about that real quick. You bought a house at 13%. You certainly could have rented a house for a lot less.
For less than half the money, yes. I could have rented that house for less than half the money.
So would you have put the difference in the stock market?
No.
Okay. What benefits did you get by buying that house, paying that $1,300 or whatever it was a month?
Right. Okay, so first of all, I knew enough to know what I was dumb at.
Okay.
So to know that I would not have known what to invest in the stock market. It's not that I didn't invest in the stock market at the time. I did. As a matter of fact, I invested in very safe mutual funds. And I can tell you that 20 years later, they were worth the same amount that I invested originally, which means that I lost tons of money due to inflation.
Okay.
So it was good that I didn't invest all my money in.
Well, they were very safe because they were probably bonds and money markets that were basically.
The point is that I knew what I was dumb at. I knew what I didn't know.
Right.
And I knew that I understood housing. I understood that everybody needs a house. And I understood that the price of housing tends to go up. It doesn't go up everywhere. It doesn't go up all the time. I mean, we can all point to examples where a house today is the same basic value that it was maybe 30 years ago, depending on where you are in the country. So this is not one size fits all. So it is about paying attention to your market. But I also knew that homeownership was important. I knew that I had to pay to live somewhere, so I may as well pay to live somewhere and pay toward owning that home rather than paying someone else's mortgage. I mean, we say this all the time. You're going to have to pay for housing. The question is, are you paying for your own home, or are you paying for someone else's home? I mean, that's really the only thing, the only discussion to have. So yeah, so I chose home ownership, and I think a lot of people who are in it for the long haul will choose home ownership. I understood that, and that opened up the doorway for me to own other homes going forward. I was very young, and I, continued to buy homes as I progressed in my life. And all of that taught me a lot of things. It taught me discipline. It taught me sacrifice. It taught me to live on ramen noodles, which I'm not looking down ramen noodles because that's how I was able to pay my bills, by not spending a whole lot on much else except my mortgage payment. I learned a lot of things. And that's how I got from there to here.
A $300,000 house in San Diego 30 years ago is worth somewhere around $1.3 million today.
Sure.
We know this because we went and looked at these houses that were $1.3 million and said, I wonder what they were worth 30 years ago. I remember stories of people in the military who bought houses who were laughed at. I can't believe you're paying that much for a dumb house and you're only going to be here 4 years. And the, $174,000 house they bought in 1989 was worth, $300 when they sold it 4 years later, and they put $100,000 in their pocket. And when you're like a lieutenant JG or a lieutenant in the Navy and you're making $1,700 a month, and you're not really saving anything probably. You don't make a ton of money in the military, at least you didn't back then. And then all of a sudden, one of your buddies goes, I just sold my house and we have $100,000. Matter of fact, I remember when I first got hired at United, we'd been saving, but we were saving like $500 a paycheck. because we were living on base. We're being extremely frugal. So we had like $12,000, which was a ton of money saved in the bank. But I had about $12,000 in the bank. And a friend of mine, and I don't know if some of this was inherited or how they got this, but he told me when he got hired at United, he said, we're buying a house. Mm-hmm. And I go, wow, it's not going to be like, how are you going to afford the payment? He goes, no. We're putting $100,000 down on the house. We're putting all our money down on the house. So the house is like 180, but we're only going to have an $80,000 mortgage. So it'll be super affordable because first year at United made like $2,300 a month. So he had this like $700 a month mortgage payment. And I remember thinking, wow, you have $100,000, like it's like a ton, like you have $100,000 to just put down on a house. That's crazy. And yeah, that's the true story. Mm-hmm. So sometimes when you look back historically and you see this, remember, think about this. The people who were saying, the boomers, they got lucky. Oh, they're so lucky. Houses were so cheap back then. You probably just could have pocket change and bought a house. Mm. And then 5 years later, they were worth $1 million, right? That wasn't the case. It was almost always cheaper to rent a house versus buy a house. And the people who just sucked it up for a couple years won. Mm-hmm. And the problem is, I know this is going to piss people off, but some of this is the marshmallow test. Some people are just like, I can't see past tomorrow. If it's not a benefit today, I don't care in a year or two what the advantage is. I don't want to deal with it because, whatever. Right. They always look at the negative. They never look at the positive.
Well, what's the thing that Warren Buffett said? Getting rich over the long run isn't that hard.
He said it's easy. He said no one wants to do it. No one wants to get rich slow.
Yeah. Well, but that's what we're talking about. Is that generally speaking, home ownership is a path to wealth. It's just a long path over the span of decades, and that's what our lives are made of.
We are not saying, because people won't even probably, I'll guarantee you someone writes in the comments, oh, you realtors, you always say now is a good time to buy.
No.
Okay, we're not saying that. We're just pointing out what has happened over history. Now, remember in 2013, remember the shadow inventory that was going to crash the housing market? Mm-hmm. People came on the channel. You can go back and find the comments. Oh, you guys are dumb. Everyone should be selling right now. Think of all the people who sold their house in 2013 waiting for the market to crash. Mm. And home prices are triple. Probably in Vegas, they're triple what they were in 2013.
Right.
Because, the second wave of a million foreclosures was the second wave coming.
Right. So, look, this appreciation that we're talking about, it is market specific. Most markets have had substantial appreciation, but not every market. I mean, we have come across markets where, like I said, homes are worth today what they were approximately worth 30 years ago.
Midwest, parts of the Northeast.
Sure. So it is market specific. So this is just a discussion to illustrate a point that applies to most of the country, but not all of it.
Yeah. I believe wealth is created through two things, savings and investment. Mm-hmm. You have to save and you have to invest.
Right.
And if you have a monthly expense that is just getting more and more every year, it's eating into your ability to save and invest. Mm-hmm. And it's very difficult to avoid housing costs unless you move in with a parent and they don't charge you anything, right?
Right.
But even with that, they should be the richest people on the planet because they're putting all their money into the stock market since they don't have any expenses. And they're probably not putting anything in the stock market, right?
Right.
If anything, the only people putting money in the stock market are actual homeowners. And the reason why I did this video is because I've just got a little bit tired of all the people saying, oh, that $600 difference, if you put that in the stock market, over 50 years, it would be $1 million. And it's like, yeah, but you would have spent that money in rent. More than that amount of money in rent because you'd be paying $6,000 a month in the future.
Well, the other thing is I don't know how many people have the discipline to not spend that money on consumables versus investing.
Right. That's part of it right there. Some people are just wired we work with investors that are wired, they want to own everything. And they're like, I know it's going to be tight now, but in 5 years, I'm going to be sitting pretty. Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And some people just can't do that. They're just like, no, if it's not good for me today, mm-hmm. then I don't want to do it.
Well, and we work with investors that understand that it's going to be tight for the next 5 or 7 years, and then it gets better. And when by the time they reach retirement in 30 years, then they're going to be sitting pretty. So these are people who are in it for the long game. Real estate is the long game. So that's part of the message that we're trying to convey.
That's it.
Okay. So if you made it to the end, we thank you. We appreciate you for still being here. Please remember to like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the video. Leave us your real estate related comments. Tell us what you think. Tell us how old you were the first time you bought your first house, and how that came about. We love
22.
your stories. Oh, there you go. I was 20. And so there you go. So we want to hear about your real estate stories. We appreciate you being here. Please subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the video, like the video, comment on Todd's fabulous wardrobe. And
I got this in Korea when I was on active duty in the Marine Corps.
There you go. So we'll see you
in
on
the
the
90s.
We'll see you on the next video. Bye.
Bye.